Welcome to the Duchy. It's time for another episode of the Dukes of Dice podcast, a proud member of the Dice Tower Network.
Coming to you from the Duchy in the Duke City, Albuquerque, New Mexico, it's the Dukes of Dice, a podcast about board, card, and occasionally role-playing games. Today, the Dukes review Red Raven Games' Islebound. Then they look back at their review of Viceroy in their Dukes Double-Take, and finally, they look at what game world they'd want to live in if they could. And now, the Dukes of Dice.
Hey there, everybody! Welcome back to the podcast. This is Sean.
And Alex.
This is episode 109. I'll be back.
I'll be back.
I'll be back. Get to the chopper.
Get to the chopper.
Get down.
Get down.
Are you just, wait.
You have to vote on who's doing it better.
You don't have your own,
on the
like,
guild.
Arnold Schwarzenegger catchphrases?
Those are the lines.
Yeah, I know, but I would say it.
It's not a tumor.
And then you would say the exact same thing I said.
Yeah.
Okay.
Who's doing the better Arnold?
Great.
I think I win.
But let's be clear. It's not I will be back. It's ISLE. I'll be back.
Right.
Very clever. So that's thanks to Chris Schreiber over on the Guild. If you don't know, we name all of our episodes with the help of our Guild members over on Board Game Geek. We're Guild number 2008. Lots of other awesome discussion going on there, and lots of other contributions later on in the episode for some of the topics we'll be talking about.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, quite a bit of contribution this week.
Yeah,
on multiple things.
Yeah, absolutely. So thanks, Chris, for naming that, and then we'll have our runner-up episode titles at the end of the episode.
So yeah, it's fantasy season, Sean.
It sure is.
And not just fantasy football season.
What?
For folks who are football fans. Although, Sean, you are now officially in a fantasy football league.
I am.
Mainly because of the Fantasy Board Game League.
Yes, indeed.
So, Sean, give us the backstory here. How did this all come about?
All right, so our good buddies over at the Draft Mechanic podcast, Jake and Danielle, put together this idea to do a fantasy board game league. And this is to kind of coincide with their 1-year episode, which dropped, I think, last week. Great episode. And the idea here is that we've got, are there 12 of us? No, 10 of us.
10.
There's 10 of us.
No, there's 11 and an automa.
Oh, yeah, that's right. So there's 12 of us because AIs are people too.
Even though it's an average.
Well, it's an artificial intelligence average. I don't know. So it's got us, you and I, and also our buddy Matthew. He helps out with the Dukes Dice game nights and also some of the social media stuff. And you've heard us talk about him before plenty of times. And it's got the guys from Boards Alive, Epic Gaming Night Podcast, the What'd You Play This Week podcast thing. So lots of stuff going on here. But what we did is we did this live draft, and I'll post a link to the YouTube channel that the Draft Mechanic put up. And basically, we drafted a bunch of board games, 13 total, but 10 that are in our weekly lineup. And what we're doing is we're scoring points based on the ranking, the change in ranking, the number of plays, although it caps out at 10 points there. So every 100 plays is worth a point. And then also every week there is a head-to-head vote. So like this week, for example, I'm playing Aaron from Boards Alive. And so Danielle put up a post of all of the different head-to-head matchups, and you look at the rosters and you say, which roster do I like better? Or maybe it's just which person do I like more, and so I'm gonna throw them my vote. Hey, vote for me, Sean.
Yes.
Not for Alex. Well, you can vote for him in weeks that we're not playing each other.
Right. Yeah, we're not playing each other yet. Though
No.
I'm scared to go up against your team. So Sean, you drafted first overall in this fantasy board game league.
I did indeed.
And you took the no-brainer pick.
Yeah, I took Scythe. Although right now it looks like Codenames is a slightly better performer, but that was at the midweek point. So Danielle was very nice and did a lot of work to put like a midweek thing together to show.
She's doing a ton of work in general.
It's so much work. Like it's like 3 hours each time she has to do that. So that's like 6 hours a week. That's a ton of work. Awesome work, Danielle. But so at the midway point, Codenames had already maxed out on plays. So at least at the midway point, Codenames looks like the stronger performer, but maybe once Scythe kind of catches up and plays over the course of a week, Scythe may wind up being the top performer.
You have the ratings edge.
Yeah, I think so. But I don't have room for, I do have room for Scythe to go up in terms of gaining popularity.
Sure.
So yeah, I'm pretty happy with my team overall. You have to field a Euro game, a dexterity game, a heavy game, and what am I missing? I'm missing something. Gateway game. So those are like your 4 positions, and then you have 6 are there 5 positions? What am I missing then? Oh, and a card game. That's what we were forgetting, card game. So my list, Gateway, I have Sushi Go, Dexterity's Clask, Euro is Scythe, card game is Android Netrunner, My heavy game is Food Chain Magnate. I've got Roll for the Galaxy, Orleans, The Resistance Avalon, Mysterium, and Hive. And then I've got, on my bench, I've got some games that I am hoping once they hit will kind of be like a good end of the league boost. Feast for Odin from Uwe Rosenberg coming out of Essen, and then Arkham Horror, the card game, which is coming out sometime in quarter 4, so it's kind of risky. And then finally, my other alternate is Ticket to Ride Europe, which looking at the performance is probably going to get moved up to probably replace Orleans next week.
What's your team name?
We are the Duke-a-Doodle-Doos.
Duke-a-Doodle-Doo.
Yep, that's it.
Nice. And Matthew's in this one as well. Matthew went with First Mention as his team name, and I'm his logo. If you look on the website, so people don't be confused. If you see my face, that's Matthew's team. That's not my team.
So, and what's the name of your team, Alex?
All right. So look, I want to be a championship performer in this board game league. And nobody wins more championships than I almost said it, Alexander Pfister.
Okay.
And so, I am, of course, the Albuquerque Fisters.
Yes.
Spelled PF.
PF.
ISTERS.
Very
Thank you very
important.
much. At a certain point, they just stopped reading it when it came up to my turn to draft. Like, it's always, all right, Duke-a-Doodle-Doos, your turn. All right, Doug McKenzie, Bob McKenzie, your turn to draft. And then it came to, all right, Alex, just pick something.
And in an act of supreme laziness, when you sent in your logo, it was simply a picture of Alexander Pfister holding up a box of broom service.
Yes.
But I don't know if you noticed.
They overlaid.
Yeah, someone put your picture then on the box of broom service.
Right.
Because they're like, oh, well, if he can't bother for, 2 minutes of Photoshop time, we'll help him out.
I'm not good at Photoshop.
Yeah, that's really difficult to do.
Yeah.
So, do you have your list available, Alex?
I don't.
Well, you want me to read them out?
Yeah, if you don't mind.
All right. At Gateway, you've got Takanoko.
Yes.
At Dexterity, you've got Pitch Car, Euros, Catan. Card game is Seven Wonders Duel, which was a surprise pick in the sense that you hate the game.
Yes.
But it's a smart pick. I mean,
it was my first overall pick.
I think it's the third highest performer.
So you looked at, I looked again at that.
Yeah.
Not totally the case. I think there were a couple more that are better than that.
Oh, okay.
Still. But it's high. It's a good performer.
You've got Dominant Species as your heavy game, Star Wars Rebellion, Time Stories, One Night Ultimate Werewolf, Lords of Waterdeep, Istanbul, and then your alternates are Tiny Epic Western. Again, that could be a late edition. Happy Salmon, and Can't Stop.
The plays on Happy Salmon, I know people are lying about their plays. They've been playing this more than is logged on Board Game Geek. I'm just saying. And yeah, the good thing about Time Stories for me too is I get all of the expansions with Time Stories. So all of the plays for base Time Stories and any of the expansions with it are rolled into that.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, Danielle, ton of work to do that. So I appreciate it. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So by the time you hear this, week 1 has ended. I was playing Aaron this week. Who are you playing?
I don't have any idea.
Okay, great. So by the time you do hear this, week 2 will be underway. You're playing Matt from the...
coming up next week.
Yeah, coming up next week. You're playing Matt from the Epic Gaming Night Podcast. I'm playing Roy from the Epic Gaming Night Podcast. And Matthew will be playing Aaron from Boards Alive. And by that point, Aaron will be a little bruised and battered from having to deal with my team. I hope.
Were you leading at the midway point?
I was leading the midway point by about 6 points, 106 to 100, somewhere in there.
I was up about 4 points.
Yeah. So a lot of fun, very cool. And so go check that out. I'll put a link in the show notes. You could also just go check it out on the board, or you can also just go check it out on the Draft Mechanic website. It's like kind of like right there on the front page, and there's a link and shows you how to vote. But what's really cool is that every time you vote, you're going to get entered into a drawing at the end of the season for a $100 Coull Stuff Inc. gift certificate. So,
I see. Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And you got the appeal of fantasy in general off of this.
Yes.
What was it about fantasy board gaming that had that click a little
it's
for
just
you?
the math of it and evaluating things. And I mean, it's very gamey, obviously. And I've watched all of the league. So I'm like, oh, I know what I'm doing here. So I said, hey, let's do a last minute fantasy football league. And we put it out in the guild and it filled up. We got 10 teams. We drafted Thursday night.
The day after we posted it.
Yeah, the day after we posted it, and the night of the first NFL game. I don't follow professional sports or college sports. I don't do that at all.
No, you frequently mock me for it.
No, I don't mock you for it. I don't
Mockery.
mock you for it.
By the way, my Trojans got absolutely destroyed.
Bummer.
Yeah, I know Nick Hayes and a few other folks on the guild are happy about that.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So, we got a bunch of guild members that are doing the Dukes League, and my team is the Duke City Sean's Duke City Hydras, I think is what I call
Yes, and I went with the Albuquerque Turtlebots.
Yeah.
Yeah. Baseball Highlights 2045 reference. Actual first mention.
So moving on with show business, because I probably need to wrap up this lengthy show business here, but we do have a Patreon campaign going at patreon.com/Dukes of Dice, and we've got a lot of awesome Patreon members that help support us over there. And if you'd be so inclined, we'd love it if you'd go consider supporting us there. However, part of the thing that we do is we do monthly Patreon interviews with board game media insiders and publishers and designers and things like that. And recently, Alex just interviewed Tom Vassell of the Dice Tower.
Yeah, literally yesterday.
Yeah,
as of this recording.
Pretty cool interview. And that's going to post Friday after this episode drops, so you guys should go check it out. And we thought we'd just play a very quick clip from it to see what you have to say. Anything else before we set that up?
To set a little bit of context, we were talking about the planned expansion for Dice Tower Con for next year. It's going to grow more than double in size, or about double in size, somewhere in that range. And we were talking about kind of the personal touch, worrying about losing the personal touch. And I mentioned the time Sean bought boxes and boxes and boxes of sleeves from Tom and asked Tom about that story. And so here's the clip. There were great moments. I remember Sean buying all of those card sleeves off of you. You were walking down down the lines with boxes and boxes and boxes of those card sleeves. And I remember at some point you just cut them off, right?
I had to cut them off because that's what you do to addicts.
Yeah. I think he needed it.
You know, if they're not willing to stand up, you gotta help them. And so,
yeah,
this
Poor
is
guy.
your public service announcement, guys. If you know someone who's a sleever, it's time for you to tell them no. Tell them when they've gone too far.
Hey, let me put it this way. I am an addict for savings, and I got considerable savings. I did the math when I got home, and that's what I was most excited about.
Was the savings.
It was the savings.
You sound like a Geico ad right now.
I don't. 15 minutes or more, and we'll save you tons of money on your board gaming sleeves.
Savings, yeah!
I don't sleeve everything. I sleeve maybe like 1 in 8 games.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
In your case, that's still 50, 60 games.
All right, very cool. Well, I'm very excited to hear that drop next week.
All right. Sean, what did you play this week?
So last night was Friday night date night with Raquel, and we went to get some drinks, and then we went to Empire. Yes, with Raquel.
I hope it's with Raquel.
Yeah. Don't worry, it was with Raquel. And we went to Empire, and it was kind of our abstract edition date night because we played a bunch of abstract games. We played Abalone, Quarto, and GIPF, GIPF. And both Abalone and Quarto kind of have an interesting history with me. They're older games. And my first job was at a board game store in Paradise Valley Mall in Phoenix, Arizona. And we had Quarto set up, we had Abalone set up, and so we kind of play games of this during the shift and like teaching people doing demos of these games. So it was kind of cool. I haven't played either one of those games since then. We're talking 20 plus, well, about 20 years. Yeah, good solid 20 years. And so it's very cool. So Abalone is this marble game set on a hex where you're pushing these marbles around. You can have 2 marbles push one of your opponent's marbles. There's some lateral movement. And the idea is that you're trying to push 6 of your opponent's pieces off the edge of the board. Always loved it. There's another game called Oshi that does something similar. Oshi's Japanese for push.
That's the one I've played.
And you've played that one. And Abalone's very similar. I think I like Oshi more. But it was good to play Abalone again. It's a really solid game, and it looks really cool. These nice chunky black and white marbles. Quarto is a brilliant abstract game. So in Quarto, have you played it before, Alex?
I have.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Multiple times.
Yeah, it's and Raquel loved it. She absolutely loved it. So it's there's this 4x4 grid that you're going to be putting these wooden blocks into, and all of the blocks have 4 different characteristics. They're either tall or short, dark or light, round or square, or hollow or not hollow. And what you're doing is you're giving your opponent one of the pieces, and they get to place it where they want. The object is to get 4 in a row of a matching characteristic. So 4 circles, or 4 hollow, or 4 short, whatever. And so you have to be careful what piece you're giving your opponent, because basically whoever completes that 4th in a row is going to be the winner. And so you're trying to set it up so that they have to give you the piece so that you win. We played it 3 times. She loved it. And yeah, it's a solid game, and it looks great on the table. So like if you didn't have a 2-year-old monster that just destroys everything, you could totally set this up as like a coffee table piece and just play it whenever someone comes over.
Yeah, it looked great.
Quick and easy to play, quick and easy to teach. So it's really good. Finally, GIPF, GIPF. This is part of the GIPF series. I don't know if it's GIPF or you're supposed to say GIPF, but there's other games like...
I'm enjoying how you're saying that.
GIPF. And I'm doing this.
You're putting a lot of effort into it,
and
too.
I'm doing this whole like thing where my body is like contorting as I say it. GIP.
Yeah.
See that?
Yeah.
No one out there can see it.
Yeah, trust me, I'm seeing it.
So
it's a thing of majesty, folks.
Other games in this series. There's Devon and Yinch, and I've heard excellent things about both of those. GIP, I did not care for at all. We played the basic game, and then we played the advanced game. And basically, you are trying to it's like Connect 4 in the sense that you're trying to connect 4 of your pieces in a row, and then any adjacent pieces in that line you capture, and you're trying to capture all of your opponent's pieces or make it so they have no pieces of their own to put out on the board. And you place pieces on the edge of the board, and then they push into the center, pushing other pieces in. Cool concept, but we were both kind of bored, and we wound up not finishing our second game. We're like, you want to call it? I'm like, you can win. I don't care. This is, And both of us were like, it wasn't great. I do want to try Yinch and Devon. I've heard good things about those. And apparently you can kind of combine the other games together into this series. Interesting concept. But wasn't crazy about GIPF, but Quarto was great.
It sounds like a GIPF ale. Anyway.
Wouldn't that just be GIPF fail?
Yeah, maybe.
Okay. So anyway, that was our Friday night date night abstract edition.
Excellent. Well, this week, Empire got in Potion Explosion, which is, as you may have heard from Dice Tower Con, us talking about some games we played there, fantastic. Not GIPF fantastic, just fantastic.
No, it would be GIPF fantastic.
No, I like how I'm doing it.
Then wouldn't it be GIPF fantastic?
Yeah, it would be.
Okay.
There's a hyphen there.
Okay.
It has held up. So I've played now 2 full games of this. And I don't want to talk about this in too much detail because I think we're reviewing it soon.
Yes.
Possibly next week.
Yes.
And really great, though. This is one that looks really cool. It just has that. I think if Best Components didn't include miniatures, this one would probably win the Dice Tower Award for Best Components next year. At least it should. It looks stunning, and it plays well, and I love the heck out of it. Spoiler alert for next week's review.
Okay. But what's the idea here with Potion Explosion?
So the idea is you have a whole bunch of marbles that are ingredients you're gathering. That they sit in this rack of, I don't know how many rows across it is.
5, maybe 6?
It's at least 6, maybe 7. And what you're going to do, Sean's going to look it up. What you're going to do is you're going to grab one marble and anything that collides off of that. So you get the marble you pick up, but anything also that collides of like color explodes, so to speak, and you get to pick that up too. And if, as a result of that, something else explodes, you get that, and so on and so forth. And you're using that method to gather ingredients. You're trying to fill in these potions that you have on your Bunsen burner, completing potions, using those potions to help pull additional ingredients or bend the rules of the game to try and complete things. Ton of fun. This game is combo-tastic. Combo-tastic. Sean, what's the verdict?
It's 5. There are 5.
Is it really 5?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Oh, man.
7 sounds incredibly
Yeah, okay, that might be a little long. I thought 6 at least, but all right, fair enough. It is a lot of fun. It plays pretty quickly. It's there's some good variability there because you mix in which potions you're using. There's 8 different types, and you pull 2 each game of your choice. There's a recommended a beginner starter variant, but you don't have to use that. Anyway, I highly recommend it. If you guys haven't seen this one in action, it's worth checking out. Visually, it catches your attention. You're talking about a coffee table piece. I don't think you'd want to have this thing set up because the marbles would probably go everywhere, but it looks gorgeous. So, yeah, that's Potion Explosion. Played that a couple times this week.
From Simon. Don't call them Cool Mini or Not because they're Simon now.
That's right. This is of the or not line.
Of the online.
No. What I was talking about is...
No, I understand. Cool Mini or Not, but we're not supposed to call them Cool Mini or Not. They're Simon,
right.
So it's part of the
online
line.
Yeah.
That doesn't make any sense.
Weird.
Hey, speaking of Draft Mechanic Podcast...
Okay.
Because we were speaking about them earlier.
Minutes ago.
Yeah, I know. I just wanted to throw in
that was a terrible transition.
For, a smooth transition. And
it wasn't smooth.
Speaking of the Draft Mechanic Podcast, so I had played Nations with Jake and Danielle and Matthew and Rory when they were visiting last Christmas. And so that was my first play of Nations. I enjoyed it well enough at 5. I think I'd prefer to play it at 4. I've had my copy for a couple months now, and having just played a bunch of Through the Ages in real life and a bunch of Through the Ages online, I decided, hey, let me get a feel again for Nations and see, what I prefer. I think I prefer Through the Ages, but I just wanted to see. So we played 2-player Nations, Raquel and I. Oh man, was this not good. It was just brutal. It was not particularly enjoyable. At 2-player, I liked it a lot at 5, and I think I still like it. I think this definitely gives credence to the fact that there is a place in a collection for both of these games, if you like the civilization building game. Nations plays better at higher players, and I think Through the Ages plays better at fewer players. The 2-player Nations was just kind of brutal. There are these events that come up, and typically whoever is going to win one of the events probably going to win both, which is going to set them up to just keep winning. Raquel just ran away with this game. Just ran away with it. It felt like we were playing completely different games. This is a little bit more abstract, I think, than Through the Ages. It's a little bit more easier. It's a little more tactical and less strategic than Through the Ages. Through the Ages is very strategic. You're really setting yourself up for future turns, and there's some of that here, obviously. But this game plays quicker, which is nice, and I think that's why it can play at higher player counts better. But I have zero desire to ever play Nations at 2 players again. I don't even know that 3 would necessarily feel a whole lot better. I think 4 or 5 might be the sweet spot for this, but I'm not sure. I'll have to try that out. I'm definitely not, I'm not off of Nations. I think it's still a really good game, but not at 2 players. So that's Nations.
Speaking of the Draft Mechanic podcast, I got into play Power Grid this week. Yeah. I don't know how that segues, but it does. I got into play of Power Grid, and man, it reminded me of why this was a consideration for the top 10. My top 10. It might actually be a top 10 game. I'm not going to do a redo of it right this second.
Oh, you're not?
No, I'm not.
Okay, that's good.
For those who don't know, this is one where you are auctioning off power plants of different types. Some use coal, some use oil, some use trash, or depending on your edition, natural gas, and some use uranium to power different cities that you're building out.
You're uranium.
Thanks.
This episode's off the rails. Go on.
Yeah, it is. To power cities that you're building out across the board. You have to build supplies, buy supplies for them. The market refills each round. People buy from the market, adjusting the prices. It's a lot of fun. It's very mathy, very mathy. We played the Northern Europe map, kind of the Scandinavia experience.
Looked very interesting.
It is. It's obviously very congested towards the bottom when you're more into Denmark and the Netherlands and that part of Europe, and very spread out when you get up into Norway and Finland and Sweden. So it's a ton of fun. But I nearly choked. So I did win. I won on a tiebreaker, but I nearly choked it away.
Yeah.
Nearly. And we explained that we were talking about this on the Dukes chat. And yeah, so here's the scenario. Experienced Power Grid players will know a little bit more about what's going on here. I had 15 cities built out, and I had 15 capacity for my power. No one else had, I think the next closest was 14 or 13 in terms of cities built. And on top of that, capacity-wise, no one was within, I think Matt was the closest at 13. So no one could get high enough to challenge me on capacity. And I could end the game. I had the money to end the game. What I should have done, because the highest Matt could have gotten, was get up to 15 capacity on his power plant. What I didn't do was anything. I just kind of sat back and I passed on the auction, which basically allowed Matt to tie me on capacity, and then I just had to hope that I would ultimately win on the tiebreaker, which is money. And I did by $9. Should not have come down to that. I had plenty of money left over. I had $89 left over, Sean. Okay. That would have been more than enough to buy whatever I needed to up my capacity.
Sure.
To just straight up win.
Yeah.
What's wrong with me?
How long do we have?
Yeah, a lot. Yeah, but a ton of fun. A lot of fun. We played this one 4-player. Great game. Would love to play more of it. Power Grid is superb.
Cool.
So, yeah, that was Power Grid.
Hey, speaking of redoing your top 10 list, I got another game of Arcadia Quest&, which is a top 10 game for me. That's not changing anytime soon, but some of the shine has come off of this game for me.
Oh.
But again, it doesn't affect its rating and doesn't affect its position in the top 10, at least for now. So this is continuing our campaign, which kind of got put off.
Are you almost done with that?
Yeah, we have one more left. And so this is so Jeremy, our buddy Jeremy, one of our Patreon knights, by the way. He has all these beautifully painted figures. He's done a fantastic job. And then also playing with Max and Nick, one of our Patreon dukes. And it is the gameplay is still so good. I love the gameplay here. We're at a point in the campaign where Jeremy and I are just so far behind in terms of abilities and in terms of some of the synergies that it feels like we're just playing completely different games. We go to attack and we're like, I'm going to grab my 3 dice to attack. Hooray! And then Nick grabs his guy and it's like, I'm going to grab my 8 dice to attack. Ha ha ha. Yeah. So I don't know that I like campaign play for Arcadia Quest.
Interesting.
Yeah. So the campaign play is not super involved in the sense that, say, like Pathfinder the Adventure card game is. Yeah, I don't know. I'm a little disheartened, and I'm sure some aspect of that is because I do feel so far behind, and maybe if I were ahead, I would feel better about it, but I would also kind of feel like, oh yeah, I can see that these guys over here are really far behind. That seems kind of awkward. But the individual gameplay is so strong, and I feel like rather than sticking with the same guild, because you have these three different heroes, sticking with them and just kind of upgrading them throughout, my interest is in seeing all of the different heroes, because I have probably like 20 different heroes I can draw from with a lot of the promos, and then eventually when all of the Inferno guys come out and all of that stuff comes out, I'm going to have so many guys I can choose from. And if I'm playing these campaigns, I'm not going to get to see that many of them together and see them in new and interesting combinations with one another. So I feel like the mode I want to play this in is just one-shots where you just draft a guild and you say, hey, we're going to play with, at level 4 or whatever, and we get to draft new equipment and see how that works. And I think that that's how I want to play it. Now, I know that they're going to be coming out with a tournament rule set soon, and that might be the way to do it too. Because the problem with doing a one-off is that money is kind of worthless. So you get money by killing monsters and by killing each other and doing quests and things like that. But if you're not going to be having a campaign system where you need the money to actually purchase new items, the money is kind of worthless. I don't know if there's a way that you can kind of figure that into, who actually wins the campaign or wins the individual game or not. But so kind of interesting that I've kind of come to this conclusion, and again, I love the game. I still want to play it, and I still am excited to try out all these different interactions. I'm super excited for Inferno and for Pets and Masmorra, even though it's a different game, but you'll still have Masmorra heroes that you can use in Arcadia Quest. So, but interesting kind of that I'm down on the campaign play now, when usually that is a thing that I really enjoy about a game like that, is that campaign, that leveling up, that getting better. But I think I just want to try out the different interactions with the heroes.
That's how I felt about Imperial Assault, if you'll remember.
Yeah.
That I liked the gameplay of it. I liked the head-to-head gameplay of it, but the campaign play just kind of fell flat.
Yeah.
So I think that can absolutely happen.
Sure. But again, I don't think it affects my overall appreciation for the game. I liked it so much that even without that, I still think it's an amazing game. It's still a 6, and still probably going to be in my top 10.
Fair enough.
So that is Arcadia Quest.
All right, this week on Friday, yesterday as of this recording, I got in a play of Omen, A Reign of War. This is a small box game, and Sean, you've played this one before,
I have.
right?
Yeah, I like it.
I liked it a lot.
Oh.
Had a ton of fun with this one. Yeah, 2-player head-to-head.
Okay.
It is a mean game.
Oh, yeah.
It's a mean game, and maybe it helped that we didn't... So we played with the rule wrong. So, okay, before I get into all that anyway, it's a 2-player head-to-head game where you're battling over these cities. You're trying to achieve feats to please the gods, or sweep off enough rewards from the war-torn cities to trigger endgame. Having the most points at the end of the game, you win. You have combinations of oracles, soldiers, and beasts to help you do it, as well as there are a ton of expansions for this that you can mix and match and throw different elements in. We played this pretty much just base game. Coins in this game are gorgeous little metal coins. Box is gorgeous. Art is gorgeous.
Yeah,
I think the game itself is impressive. But what you're doing basically is you're playing cards into these cities and trying to win control over the rewards that they hold, which are typically favors from the gods. We played with basically there's a wealth step in this game where you can take coins or you can take cards. And it turns out the first player disadvantage in this is that you were only supposed to take 2 wealth steps instead of 3 wealth steps. And so what I did is I took straight up money on the first turn and spent all 8 of it to trigger off a city immediately without him having a chance to respond to it. Basically sticking 5 units in a city.
Sure.
Which triggers off a battle, and I got a reward, and from then on, I was just rolling. I just rolled in that game. So it probably would have changed if we'd played the rule properly, which we didn't. That's okay. I think it's a ton of fun. It's got a lot of cool interactions with the cards. It's definitely meaner than what my taste would typically be.
Yeah.
It's a screw your opponent kind of thing. I think what makes that more acceptable to me in most 2-player games is that there's nothing personal about it. You're supposed to be playing against an opponent. Like, you're supposed to be going toe-to-toe against someone. Whereas in a 3-player, 4-player, 5-player game, that kind of stuff, if there's meanness, can be targeted and can come down to things that are outside of the game that come into the game.
Okay.
And that can be frustrating for me. In this case, it worked. It worked really well. I want to play more of this. I want to play with some of the expansions. I want to be in this world more because I enjoyed the heck out of it. Omen, A Reign of War from Smallbox Games. So that's Omen, A Reign of War by Smallbox Games, and that's a look at what we played over the news. All right, this week, big news in the board game world with Fantasy Flight Games parting ways with Games Workshop. Here's part of the release. Games Workshop has been a fantastic partner for the past 8 years, and we're thrilled that we had the opportunity to work together and bring so many new and exciting games into the world. This is the Fantasy Flight Games press release, obviously. As much as we've enjoyed creating these games, our current licensing term is coming to an end. Beginning February 28th, 2017, Fantasy Flight Games will no longer offer for sale any games in conjunction with Games Workshop, including Talisman, and all games taking place in the Warhammer Fantasy and Warhammer 40k universes. For board gamers, that also means Blood Bowl, Forbidden Stars, Fury of Dracula as well. Sean.
That's my Tina from Bob's Burgers.
Oh. That
Yeah.
sounded more growly than that. All right, what's the news here, Sean?
I'm so sad, Alex.
Okay.
I am so sad right now. Like, I'm so legitimately sad about this news. I love both the 40K and the fantasy universes. I've spent so much time in them for the last 20-some years playing the different games, and I love what Fantasy Flight has done with these universes. I love that they had this license. I love Forbidden Stars. I was dying for a Forbidden Stars expansion for some of the other factions. I love Blood Bowl Team Manager, and yeah, this is just super disappointing to me. Very disappointing, and I'm curious what happened here. I'm very curious. Was it they just don't want to continue to pay for the licenses? Were the games not performing well enough? I don't know that was the case. Did GW just want too much money? GW has been mismanaged as a company for years, for at least the last 10 years. And I'm a former GW employee. I mean, just on a retail level, but I've seen the mismanagement. I've read almost every year. I probably haven't in the last 2 years, but I've read all of the annual reports that they've issued, and they just have this backwards business model. And I don't understand them. I don't like what they did with completely nuking the fantasy world when they did Age of Sigmar. And so whatever happened here, with just through my pure speculation, I'm gonna throw it on GW's shoulders here and some mismanagement, some poor decision, because this had to be a good deal for them. I don't know what the nature of the license was whether it was a one-time payment with some residuals. I'm sure it must have. But I'm wondering also if, since they're trying to do their own board game thing, like they've got the Assassinorum Execution Force, and they've obviously had Space Hulk, and they've got Dreadfleet, and now they've got the new Warhammer Quest, the new version of it. If they're trying to say, well, we want to make these board games ourselves, I don't know. But for the most part, Space Hulk's great. Warhammer Quest, I think, is a pile of hot garbage. The more I think about it, I only played it that one time, and I had paid $150 for it because it's an expensive game with amazing miniatures, and I was maybe trying to justify that cost, and now I'm like, yeah, I have no desire to play it. Jeremy asked me this week, hey, do we want to ever play this again? I'm like, nope, I don't think I do. So here are the games. Blood Bowl Team Manager, Chaos in the Old World, Dark Heresy is the RPG. I'm not going to read the RPGs.
Because it's only occasionally role-playing games.
Forbidden Stars, Fury of Dracula, Relic, Space Hulk Death Angel, Talisman, Warhammer Disc Wars, Warhammer Quest, the adventure card game, and Warhammer 40K Conquest. I mean, for you don't.
Yeah, I care not about any of this.
I care greatly, and like Warhammer 40,000 organized play or Conquest organized play is going to be over at the end of this year, which is a bummer. So, yeah, I'm really disappointed about this news, and you are unaffected.
Unaffected whatsoever.
Yeah,
I know a lot of people are though. So for those of you feeling the pain of this, well, I hope you feel less of the pain of this.
Yeah, I'm very sad.
Yeah, sorry,
Very
Sean.
sad about this news.
Sorry, Sean.
I blame you, GW. I have no basis for that, but other than your track record.
Okay. Next up, a new game in the Key line, Keys to the City, London. I have no idea what any of this is about because Sean threw it in the news.
Keyflower.
Okay.
You know Keyflower?
I do know Keyflower. I've never played it.
Oh, you have? Oh, I thought you had.
I've never played Keyflower.
Oh,
to my knowledge.
You should. You'd like Keyflower.
Okay.
I mean, it's like medium heavy, but I think you'd like it. So this is designed by Richard Brees and Sebastian Bleasdale. And so there's games like Keyflower and Cathedral. Get it? Cathedral instead of Cathedral. Cathedral. Anyway, this is reportedly supposed to be very similar to Keyflower play. What I love about Keyflower is you have all of these different colored meeples behind your screen, red, yellow, and blue, and then you can get some green meeples, and then you have all of these tiles, and you're using the meeples to either activate a tile or bid on a tile so that you can then incorporate it into your little farm. But here, instead of building this farm, you're building a different borough of London. And eventually you'll upgrade these tiles, which lets you flip the tiles so that you get a stronger action or ability. But in this one, you're going to be able to add a little 3D piece that kind of shows whatever landmark. I don't know, Big Ben or St. Paul's Cathedral. Those are the two I know. Westminster Abbey. Oh, I know that one too. The
Scotland Yard.
Imperial War
Probably
Museum.
Not Scotland Yard.
Is that a landmark? I've been there. But anyway, so this sounds really interesting. I really enjoy Keyflower quite a bit. In fact, I think it got played Wednesday night over at Dukes Dice Game Night. great game, and I'm very excited to see this. I'm sure there'll be some different intricacies to this game that sets it apart from Keyflower, but I'm excited. So that's supposed to come out later this year from Hutch and R&D Games. Keyflower sound interesting at all to you, Alex?
Sure.
Excellent.
Always happy to help, Sean.
All right.
Finally, we're going to look at a Kickstarter this week. This week, we're talking about Endangered Orphans of Condyle Cove. This one's coming out from Certifiable Studios. Endangered Orphans is a 2 to 4 player hybrid card/board/horrible game that really should be ignored at all costs. This is from the Kickstarter page. Unless you enjoy fun strategy games that are challenging without being difficult to learn, in which case you should not ignore this game for the cost of $25 plus shipping. My summary of this one from looking at the rules and how it plays is orphans are trying not to get eaten by the boogeyman is the idea.
Okay.
You have cards that flip up to form the board each turn, different places where the orphans can hide from the boogeyman. You have options. Your deck is called the options deck. And when you run out of options, the boogeyman comes in and gets you, and you lose. You win if you're the last player standing, though, as they say on the Kickstarter page. Does anyone really win? Because ultimately some poor orphan ends up getting taken away by the boogeyman every time you play. Sean, have you had a chance to take a look at this one?
Yeah.
What do you think?
It looks kind of interesting. It looks really dark. I really like the art.
Yeah, the art's great, I think.
It's kind of, okay, imagine Peanuts characters, but like somewhat three-dimensional and even sadder than Charlie Brown.
Oh, much sadder.
Not kicking the football because Lucy pulls it away every time. Yeah, that's how this game is so dark. But it looks pretty cool. Yeah, I would be interested in this. $25, that's that sweet spot. You know what, Alex? I'm going to do it.
He's backing it right now.
Right now.
On the episode.
$5 shipping here in the US, so $30 total. It's done. It's done. Continue, and boom, it's backed.
Wow. Just based off of the art and the gameplay looks enough for you?
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. I'm glad you're doing it, so that means I don't have to. Hooray! This one did meet its funding goal of $100,000. I think that's the first time on an episode you've backed something.
Untrue.
Is that okay? What do you remember the other one?
Near and Far, I believe.
Oh, because you'd forgotten.
Speaking of Red Raven games.
Right. We're getting there in just a second. This campaign ends October 5th, so you still have some time to get in there. They're looking at stretch goals at this point. They're well above their funding goal. That is Endangered Orphans of Condyle Cove, and that's a look at the news.
So I want to take a few minutes to talk about a brand new insert from our friends over at Meeple Realty. Wait, who are you?
Hi, I'm Mariah.
How'd you get down here?
I don't know. I just showed up here.
Hey, do you like any word-based board games?
Yeah, I like Codenames.
Oh, have you played Codenames Pictures?
Yes, I have.
Ooh, have you played Codenames Undercover? Don't answer that. You're not allowed to, Mariah. You're too young, okay? Deal with it.
Okay.
So anyway, our buddies over at Meeple Realty have a brand new insert for Codenames. But not only does it support Codenames, it supports Codenames Pictures, Codenames Undercover, and it holds all three of them in one of those boxes. So go check out the Spy headquarters. In fact, I'm holding it in my hand.
I think it looks really, really cool and space efficient.
Yes. Check out MeepleRealty.com to see all of their other high-quality, innovative inserts engineered to improve your play experience and speed up setup and breakdown of some of your favorite games.
Meeple Realty, think inside the box. This week, we're taking another journey into Ryan Lockett's brain. That's right, it's another Red Raven game, and it's Islebound, a sail on the high seas. Did we like it? We'll tell you.
All right, well, Islebound, like you said, designed by Ryan Lockett, art by Ryan Lockett, published by Ryan Lockett and Red Raven Games, a true Renaissance man of board gaming.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And by the way, good at all of those things, too, I
exactly.
might add.
Yeah, normally, if you said that about someone, I'd be like, oh, that game's probably going to be a pile of hot garbage. That is not the case here. So Islebound, you are a ship captain and you've got a crew. You've got this player board that has your little ship on it. It's got room for your crew on deck. It's got room down below when they get exhausted or injured. And it's got your hold where you're going to store wood and fish that you're going to use throughout the game. Now, the map are these weird hexagons, right? These weird hexagon tiles. There's 4 of them. And each of them has 3 sections that are different islands. And then there are these port pieces, which are kind of your home locations on each of the corners. So basically we're talking about, 12 16 different spots on the map where all different islands that you're going to be able to visit with your ship. And you have a player piece, which is your ship, and you're going to be moving it around, sometimes 2 spaces at a time, sometimes more, depending on what crew you have. They're going to increase that or other abilities, or you could spend fish for extra points of movement. And you're going to go to these different islands to visit them. And at each of these islands, you're going to get a different kind of action. Some of them may give you fish, some of them may give you wood, some of them may let you get pirates or sea serpents, which you're going to use to attack islands later. Some of them may give you abilities that let you rest. So once your crew is exhausted, it brings them back in. All sorts of little things where you're kind of just turning something into another, eventually into some form of points. Because the object here is to score the most points at the end of the game, which is triggered when a certain number of buildings are built, depending on the number of players. And you're going to add up all of the little point symbols that you have, which are going to be in the form of your buildings. It's going to be this 7-point tracker at the top of the board, where every time you move, you gain a point, you would just move it up there. And then when you hit 7, there's this cool tile that gives you some one-time ability. Maybe it's $3, or maybe it's some pirate cards. And then you kind of start back on the track. And so you're checking that. Also, your money's worth a point a piece, and any endgame scoring that you're going to have from your buildings. Now, the game's pretty simple in that it's just move and then visit a town on these islands. But you can also, like I said before, attack them. Certain islands can be taken over by military force, and some of them can be taken over by diplomacy. You ally with them. And there are ways that you're going to gain influence, and there's this really cool feature where you're putting these cubes on an influence track, and the higher you are up with your cubes, the more individual influence each of those cubes is worth. It's kind of a hard concept to explain without the visual, but it's a really cool concept, and we'll probably talk about it a little bit more in gameplay. Now, you'll eventually spend that influence to ally with certain towns, and once you do that, you no longer have to pay the entry fee to get into those towns, and in fact, you also get paid that entry fee by other players that visit that town, plus whatever the difficulty of that town is, you're getting as a one-time influx of money, which you're going to use either for points at the end of the game or to, fuel your other endeavors. And then if you're going to attack a town, you're going to look at that same difficulty. But again, some of the towns can only be attacked, some can only be allied. There is, I think, 1 or 2 that is either, but it's a little bit more difficult. Now, once you attack a town, you're looking at the target number, and you're going to use your pirates that you've acquired and your sea serpents. There's some die rolling. There's some interesting allocation of dice to figure out if you're going to meet that. If you don't quite meet it, you can injure some of your crew to help get you to that threshold point. But again, same thing. You now control the island. You get that influx of money. And if someone wants to take over an island from you, it always counts as an extra 2, whether attacking or for influence purposes. And this is going to continue. You're going to be sailing around, collecting all these things, turning them in for money, for points, for buildings, whatever. And at the end, whoever has the most points is the winner of Islebound. So let's talk about the rulebook real quick, Alex. Did you have a chance to go through that at all?
I did, because I had to teach this.
Oh.
I taught this one to Matthew just the other day out at Empire Board Game Library. We played this one 2-player. I'll talk about some of the scalability questions I have about this in a bit. But we did look through the rulebook. There are a couple of things that were... I don't think it's a bad rulebook by any means. I think you can learn the game pretty readily from it. There are certainly some sections where things are missing. There's terminology on the cards where it couldn't potentially be a couple of different things.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, the term conquering is used.
Yeah.
But it's not actually used in the rulebook.
Sure.
It's used on a card. It says you get some benefit whenever you conquer a building. Does that mean conquering it through diplomacy too? Probably not. And my guess is it's only through attacking, especially because the building's sword school. I wish that was spelled out a little bit more clearly in the rulebook. I don't think that in that section under attacking, the word conquering isn't used. Whereas for diplomacy, the word allying with a town is used.
Yeah.
And that's much clearer. So I think there are some little things like that come up. But for the most part, it's fairly easy to learn from the rulebook.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with that. I know there was an issue with some of the building stuff. Like there was something that mentioned a rule in the building a building section, but not in the buying a building section.
Right.
And there's a difference there because there's a town with an action spot which lets you build a building for some cost of fish and or wood, but then you can also buy as a free action the different buildings for their gold cost. And it's usually better to build in some senses because you are basically netting points. Whereas if you're just buying, you're just turning coins, which are worth a point each, in for a building, which is worth the same amount of points. So, but for the most part, yeah, I think I'd agree with that assessment. So components art.
The art is gorgeous. It's a Ryan Lockett game.
Oh, man.
I don't think we have to even really get that in depth, because if you know any Ryan Lockett games, that style, that whimsical, kind of cartoony style that he has is just gorgeous. The game looks gorgeous.
You know a Ryan Lockett game when you look at it. You can clearly tell just by looking at it. And I love it. I love this art style. I love the different crew that you have. So there's some humans, there's some lizard people, and there's a warthog, and there's a chicken, a rooster. And every time I look at his art, regardless of what game it is, I just tend to smile. I love his art style, and it's very distinct from a lot of others out there. I haven't seen some other game that I would confuse with Ryan's. In terms of the art.
You mentioned the kind of unique crew members before our 4-player game. I was swapping around because I had 3 boring human crew members, and I wanted something a little more interesting. So I had to do some swaps and swap my mustache guy for this guy and swap this one for that one. Eventually, I think I got a frog on my team.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or no, it was a rooster. I got the rooster on my team.
Yeah, the rooster? Okay.
Yeah. Someone, because I remember this distinctly, because someone else, I think it was Cameron, had the frog, and at one point during combat was one short, and thus had to break the frog's legs.
That's right.
Because that's the term I use. It's not injuring. You don't injure a crew member.
No.
You break their legs. Now, in this one, it's a little clearer, by the way, because in Above and Below, you could do other things that had nothing to do with, it was just exerting yourself to maybe get something a little better.
Yeah.
In this case, you're actually in combat all the time whenever you're injuring someone.
Sure.
You can't break someone's legs to do better at diplomacy. So it actually makes more sense to call it breaking someone's legs in this case.
Okay.
I still call it that. That's my favorite term.
Yeah, that's fair. Now, as far as the components go, there is a Kickstarter edition, and then there's the retail copy. We do have the retail copy, and again, I should probably mention, just for full disclosure, this was a review copy from Red Raven Games, so I just want to put that out there so you're all aware of that. But we have the retail version of it, and the player boards, all of the boards are, I think, of a good thickness. There's some warping, but that's more our climate and humidity, and that just tends to happen here. That creates some difficulty with the board pieces staying in place. But again, that's our issue here in Albuquerque. I did play once with a plexiglass thing over the top of it, so it doesn't move around. I think you would probably see less of that if they were like squares, but I think it's worth it because I like how it's I like the look of it. It's an odd shaped board. It kind of comes again as an elongated hexagon.
Bit of a table hog.
It takes up a lot of table space. It absolutely does. So you've got the main board, which are all of the different islands. Then you have another shared board, which is where you have the influence track, where you have that 7-point track that you kind of keep going back and forth on. And also where the events, which we didn't really talk about in the rules, the events and the boasts, the trumpets are located. And this is kind of cool too, because there's not a lot of these, but there's basically one for all the events where, for every island. So if you happen to be in an island and you can fulfill the cost of an event, that's going to be the main way you gain influence on the influence board. Or when you visit one of the islands, there's the boast. You get to boast.
I think it's called Farwald.
Yeah, Farwald. You get to boast about some aspect of your little empire. Either you have a ton of crew on deck, or maybe you have a bunch of different islands.
Of wood. That's one.
Or a bunch of wood, and you say, I'm boasting about all my wood.
Ha ha!
Ha ha! And you gain some points. And what's cool is sometimes you're incentivized to gain those points because you want to get that 7-point chip, which gives you whatever bonus that you may be looking for.
Stare at my wood and rejoice.
Wow. So anyway, I love the components in this retail edition. I think that they do a good job. The iconography is pretty clear.
I would agree. Absolutely.
Yeah.
The other thing I would say as a plus on the component side is the boards are reversible. They have an advanced variant of them on the side, and you can mix and match those. You don't have to play with all beginner, all advanced.
Right.
They obviously recommend for your first game you play with all beginner. I then play with all advanced for my other play of this one.
Okay.
And so I've seen all of them and how they work. The advanced is not significantly more.
Yeah, no.
I think you could mix and match these pretty freely, and it would be fine.
Yeah.
You'd be okay. I like that you can move them around and they all fit. Each game's going to have a different layout. For instance, in our 4-player game, the one island to build stuff on was way on the edge of the board. Whereas the next game I played it was centrally located and you could use it more frequently.
Yeah.
And I think that changes how a game plays. There's a good variety of buildings, so that changes how a game plays too. But I think that reversible, it's done well. It's certainly done well. I like the wooden discs that you use to kind of indicate where events need to go. I think all of it's clean. There's nothing that gets in the way of this game components-wise or art-wise.
Sure. So what do you think about the theme of Islebound? Does it feel like it's telling a story, and is there a connection between the mechanics and the theme?
I'm going to say right off the bat that what I'm about to get into is a bit of an unfair criticism.
Okay.
Because I'm comparing this against another Ryan Lockett game.
Against Above and Below.
Exactly right.
Okay.
And I want that Ryan Lockett. I love that story. The thing that picked up Above and Below so much was that wonderful story he had in that storybook. If you're coming into Islebound expecting that or thinking that that's going to be the case, there's a taste of that kind of on the event cards. But really, it was an afterthought for us.
Okay.
It was. I mean, we didn't read those as you flipped over those cards. Sometimes we didn't read them. Sometimes we didn't read them until after we'd already completed what we were being asked to do. Mm-hmm. And it was something that we didn't go to as much. And I was disappointed with that. And that's not a fair criticism.
I agree. That's not.
Well, the reason it's not a fair criticism is if I'm judging this as a game alone, mechanically, I think it's his best game.
Yeah.
I think it's better than Ancient World. I think it's better than Above and Below mechanically.
Sure.
I really wanted that story in there. Now, the theme, I think, still carries through in many ways. You have different crew members that have different skills and abilities, the breaking the legs to do better in combat. In fact, you can have ally with the sea serpents. Matthew saw that as a disconnect. I don't. I think that's, you're feeding them fish and you're training them and they're kind of joining your side temporarily.
It's like how to train your sea serpents.
Yeah. And you have pirates that can hop on board and help you out. You guys were making fun of how I had my board laid out, but I had perfectly good logic behind it, I thought. Anyway, it was a bit of a mess at times.
It was.
No doubt about it.
We could never tell what you had.
Ships are messy things.
That's the reason why you won that game.
Is it?
Because we couldn't evaluate your board properly.
Oh, is it? That sounds an awful lot like an excuse.
Yeah. No, it is.
Okay. So I think thematically it all fits together fairly well.
Yeah.
I just was hoping and wishing for more of that story in there. And I know that was actually Matthew's comment too, was he really wanted more of that storytelling aspect to this.
Huh.
And I think it's because you're judging it against another Ryan Lockett game. So it's hard, but it does hold it back a bit in my mind, oddly enough. And again, I know it's not fair.
Interesting.
But that's the case.
Okay.
I wanted more story here, Sean.
I feel like Islebound needed Titans, Alex.
Did it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I just feel like I'm going to judge this game because it didn't have Titans.
It's not a storytelling game. I acknowledge that, but there's an attempt to put it in there.
Uh-huh.
I don't know how it was pitched on Kickstarter, so I can't talk about how the game was sold.
Yeah, it wasn't.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's we'll get into the mechanics, and I enjoy this game mechanically.
I feel like Islebound needed some spaceships like Empires of the Void had.
Again, I'm comparing not on something that would be a disconnect for the game necessarily. I'm comparing to I so enjoyed the world he created with Above and Below that I was hoping that it would be kind of a more of a C version of that world.
Okay.
And it wasn't.
Yeah. No, it sure wasn't.
It wasn't.
Nope.
We didn't mention this in components, by the way. What I think is really cool is you can use your crew members in Above and Below as well.
Yes, that is really cool.
On the back side of them, they have the abilities that you'd need to recruit those guys, and so it's basically kind of a mini expansion in some ways for Above and Below.
Yeah, that's super cool. That's just such a cool thought to have, because you could have just put, here's the injured side of the crew members and it's nothing, but now it's an additional component for Above and Below. I think that's really cool.
I think part of why I'm coming down as hard on the storytelling thing is Above and Below stood out to me because of the story.
Okay.
Because of that piece of it. And the game that's here is very enjoyable and well designed and good. But I don't think it's going to stick with me as long as something like Above and Below did. And I certainly don't have as clear of memories of this, or will have as clear of memories of this as I did with Above and Below.
Okay.
And for me, I cherish that part of Above and Below, and I didn't have it here.
But were you...
I think for Near and Far, by the way, I'm really looking forward to it for that reason.
Sure. But were you creating narratives? Were you creating stories about your ship and your crew? And I mean...
A little bit.
Yeah.
But not a ton.
Okay.
Not as much as I wanted to.
All right.
But a little bit. There's certainly a bit of that there.
Yeah.
Especially when the frog had its legs broken and we kind of joked about, hey, who's having frog's legs, or something like that.
So the other component then to theme is, was there at least a thematic connection between the actions that you're taking and what they're purporting to do?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, there is. Yeah, I think so.
Okay. So yeah, I would say this is a very thematic Euro, a very thematic medium Euro that does not necessarily have strong storytelling elements because you forgot to put the book in. Maybe. Oh, I forgot to bring the book out, Alex. Would that have helped if I had the book?
Yes, that would have helped.
Okay.
Again, I said from the beginning, it's not a fair criticism. But this is an inherently subjective thing we're doing.
By the way, if you're now looking in your copy of Islebound for the book, there's not a book in there, so stop looking for the book. So anyway, I didn't want to confuse anyone, Alex. There's probably one person out there that's like, I didn't find the book. Where's the book? Yeah, just want to make sure that's clear. Let's talk about the gameplay. Let's talk about the mechanics, because I think what you said is probably true, that this is mechanically his best game, and I think I would agree with that. I like this spatial action selection. Games that use that are
trademark Sean, Dukes of Dice.
Yeah. Istanbul, Yokohama uses that. Longhorns, where the action that you're selecting is not just whatever. You have to be able to move there in some way, shape, or form. And I really like that. I really like that there's that spatial component to it. You say to yourself, I really want to take this action to go get fish, but if I do that, then I'm not going to be close enough to take the follow-up action, so what am I going to need to do in the meantime to kind of get my way over there? Or is there some way I can boost my speed so I can move 3 spaces instead of 2? I really enjoy that. And I feel like I feel like mechanically, this game is really strong. It's not a heavy Euro, but there's still some definite thinkiness to it. There's still some strategy and a little bit of tactical gameplay too, but I really think it's a strategic game, especially when you start to buy some of these buildings that give you incremental advantages. So like, for example, every time I rest, now I get a pirate. Oh, that's pretty cool. Or every time I go hunt for treasure, and that's something we didn't mention, every time you pay an entry fee to go into a port, it doesn't go to the bank, it goes to the treasure map. And if you basically don't enter a port, you can just take any coins that are on the treasure map, which is pretty cool. So there are some buildings that will say whenever you hunt for treasure, you can, get this added benefit. And so I think you can kind of craft your strategy and build an engine with some of those early buildings that you're buying, and you can then kind of ride that incremental advantage to victory. And I've done that several times. And a lot of it depends on where the placement is of some of these ports. So for example, I had one game where I was able to go get a bunch of books, and you use books as a threshold for purchasing certain buildings. You don't need the books to build the buildings, but you need them to purchase certain buildings. And you can also then turn books in to get other things, to get points, and also to get influence. And so what I was doing was I was just going back and forth for these like 3 ports, getting books to turn in for influence, to then go ally with stuff. And I couldn't have done that as readily if the map were laid out differently. And I think that's interesting. I think that you need to kind of sit down and evaluate the map and say, what are going to be some strong combinations that I can do? And can I get buildings that are going to help me with that strategy? And I really enjoyed that. So there is a little bit of go get this to go then turn over here to then turn over here. And in that sense, it's kind of a pick up and deliver, but it's not like a hard and fast, like I need to go to this particular port in order to go, to drop off this thing. It's just kind of saying, all right, this is what I'm trying to do. I really liked it. I thought it was solid. And so it feels like a lighter version of Merchants Marauders, a game that I really did not enjoy. It felt really long. It felt really bogged down in all these intricate rules. And that's not, and Xayah's kind of the same way. I enjoyed Xayah more than Merchants Marauders, but it's still not quite my style of game. This game, though, has a similar feel to that. It has that kind of sandboxy feel of what do you want to do, because there's a bunch of different things you can do, but it lets me do it in such a way that it just feels a little bit tighter mechanically, and it's a little bit lighter, too. I appreciate that this isn't a heavier game. So I enjoyed the feel of that sandbox, and I enjoyed that kind of sailing around, and how do I want to build my crew, and what kind of things do I want to do. I really enjoyed it.
Very good. I enjoyed it as well. It has that island hopping kind of feel, balancing act of, I need wood now I need to trade this in. Oh, now my crew's getting tired, I have to rest them. I like how he does the rest mechanic in this, where everyone comes back at once. Obviously, that's a whole part of the game in Above and Below, where you're managing beds and you're managing bed rest. This one does that in a nice, simple way. And I love the points system, where when you hit 7 points
it's so
and
cool.
you pull that on, you get a specific cool reward for it, which incentivizes you to go out and earn points over the course of the game.
Right.
I liked how the buildings interconnected, and some of them gave you a nice advantage. I was incentivized to get influence over the course of the game and got a ton of points that way through just getting influence cubes up and up and up and up. Taking over ports can be fun. It's not game-breaking if someone takes your port. It's not game-breaking if you have to pay someone at their port. You're just giving them $1, which is effectively giving them a victory point. But, oh well. I liked how it all worked together. I think he pulled some of the better mechanics from Above and Below, or at least used them and smoothed them over and made it work more cleanly. Yeah. And I enjoyed the play of this. I will say, and I think this is probably the best time to discuss this, it fell more flat at 2 players.
Okay.
At 2 players, it felt more like a solitaire kind of experience.
Sure.
In 4 players, there's sort of a race to different events that comes up. I want to get there before this other person does to fulfill this event, or make it harder for them to do so by parking my boat there. In 2 players, the map is so big and so spread out, you're really just kind of playing your own game for the most part.
Sure.
And even with that rule of if you pass through somebody, you have to exhaust a certain crew member, the administrator crew member.
Yeah.
Still didn't come up.
Okay.
I think it came up maybe once in the 2-player game.
Yeah, and I would definitely agree that 2 and 4 feels very differently. I was okay with 2. I don't think I'm as down on 2 players as you tend to, or as you are in this case necessarily, but it's not necessarily a game I'm going to think to bring out at 2 players. What I find really unfortunate, neither of us got a chance to try it at 3. The bulk of our plays have been at 4, and I enjoyed it at 4. As long as everyone's kind of moving at a snappy pace, which I think is doable. I didn't think that there were a lot of supreme moments of AP. I really think that this might shine at 3, although you think it probably is best at 4.
I think it's best at 4 because you have that competition for events, because you have that crowding, that trying to navigate around, oh, well, he took that port and I don't have a person to exhaust. Ow, I can't go there now. Or I don't want to exhaust that person because I have plans for how I want to use them.
Sure.
So because of that, and because of the fact that more people pay onto the treasure map, so that's more of an option, it picks up steam more quickly.
Yeah.
I liked it better at 4 players.
And in that sense, there's really no scaling in terms of the players as far as the map size is concerned.
The end game is scaled.
Yeah, the end game is scaled, but other than that, not really. So if you've had any experience at 3 versus 4 players, why don't you head on over to the guild? There's always going to be a guild post for the episode, so episode 109, and just let us know if you've had any experience there. Speaking of the guild, Alex.
Yes.
I'm the king of the segues this week.
Nice.
So Suzanne had this to say about Islebound. She said, it's great and one of Ryan's cleanest mechanically out of the gate. My biggest issue, similar to other games, is that if the buildings aren't getting purchased, the line feels stagnant and the game can drag on since buildings are the end game condition. But everything else flows so well. Love that it feels like there are multiple viable winning strategies. Managing your resources, the way the board setup changes the efficiency of choices, and the art, of course, make this a real winner. And yeah, that building aspect of the game, there's different buildings in that building row, that definitely can get backed up. In fact, the game that you and I played together, there was that 13 cost building that kind of wound up at the bottom. And generally, you only have access to the first 2 buildings unless you have books. So the third building, if you have 1 book, you can get it. Then the next one, if you have 2, and then the next one, if there's 3. And that kind of did clog things up a little bit. And there's not really a mechanism to kind of filter through those other than having people just buy them.
Well, there's no filter there, but I think the mitigation for it is you can get books.
Sure.
And expand your options.
Yeah. So, I mean, something to think about for sure. I don't think that's a bad aspect of the game. It's just something that you have to concern yourself with and deal with.
I think if you have too many things to monkey with that line, then books lose value.
That could be fair.
They lose too much value.
Sure. That might make sense. But I definitely do think that Ryan Lockett's games all have a similar strand of DNA. There's always these buildings that you're purchasing that are worth points and give you some sort of incremental advantage. And I find that interesting. I find it interesting that they're done in different enough ways, but they're still similar enough. It doesn't feel like he's just rehashing the same game, but there's certainly similar elements from game to game to game that you can always kind of tell it's a Ryan Lochte game. Aside from the art, obviously the art does that, magnificently, but it's interesting that there is such a similar thread in all of these games, but they still feel kind of fresh, which I think is solid.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Yeah, it definitely, this is a Lockett game for sure on many of those aspects, some of which because of things from Above and Below, some of which are things that you kind of recognize from Ancient World. That crew management and that kind of person management has always been a big factor in his games, for sure.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's, again, his best mechanically.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, I agree. All right, well, let's go to our final thoughts and rating. If you don't know, or if this is your first time listening, we rate on a 6-point scale. 1 is a poorly designed but playable, not necessarily fun. I don't think this has any chance of coming anywhere near that for either of us.
Nope.
A 6 is an all-time favorite that is a contender for the top 10. And so I'll go first, Alex. This is my favorite Ryan Lauka game. I still have not played Empires of the Void, although it's up in my collection. I'm curious to pull it up. I do think before I played Islebound, I think I liked Ancient World the best. I want to get that out to the table pretty soon, just to kind of have that comparison fresh in my mind. Very excited for Near and Far. But overall, I really enjoyed this game. This had that Merchants and Marauders feel, which I enjoy the first hour of Merchants and Marauders, but ultimately not crazy about the rest of it. This I enjoyed quite a bit. So I'm going to go ahead and give this a 5. A great game. I will rarely turn down a play of this, Alex. I find this quite enjoyable. It's kind of a bear to set up, though. But, and again, it's a big table hog. Huge table hog. But I really enjoyed this. This is by far my favorite of his games, and I think it's just fantastic. One of the criticisms, I guess, would be the player ships. People tended to move the wrong one quite a bit because there's just a little flag. All the ships are different looking, but that's not easily discernible. So maybe if the color were a little bit more clear. But overall, a great game. We'll rarely turn on a play of it. A solid 5 from me, Sean Ramirez. Your turn, Alex Goldsmith.
Thanks for giving out full names. Are you going with addresses next?
Yeah, my Social Security.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. What's yours? You go first.
No, I'm good. So for me, I was kind of debating on where this one settled in my mind.
Okay.
It's in the 4-5 range for sure. It's and I'll read both of those. 4, a good game worth playing, just not all the time, belongs in the Duchy. 5, a great game, will rarely turn down a play of it. And I think if you're looking at the mechanics of this alone and the enjoyability factor of this, I think it comes in a low 5.
Okay.
A low 5. So not a 4.75, Sean.
All right.
Or a 4.5, a low 5.
Okay.
It just gets there. It's not my favorite. I gave Above and Below a clear 5 because of just how much I enjoyed being in that world. That was one where the storytelling was so fun, it overrode doing what was best in the game.
Sure.
And that made me, there were so many moments in that made me smile and were memorable. This one, I don't know if there are many of those moments, but I think it's a better game to play.
Okay.
It's a better game mechanically to play. I'm excited to see what he does in the future. This almost feels like a stepping stone. I'd love to see if he would try at some point kind of a nautical themed Above and Below of some kind that has this good of a mechanic, but with a book.
Wet and dry.
Wet and dry. That one's free, Ryan, if you want to use that one. So I love his games. I really do. And this one, I think, cleanest mechanically, a lot of fun to play. The choices that you make are engaging, and I like the spatial piece of this. It's fun, it's rewarding. It's just that I want to play this at 4. I wouldn't play this at less, I don't think. I might try it at 3, but I definitely wouldn't play again at 2.
Okay.
So, all right, so that's our review of Islebound. Sean gives it a 5, and I give it a slightly more cautious, but still a 5.
2 5s. Good job, Brian.
You are listening to the Dukes of Dice, proud members of the Dice Tower Network. For other great shows in the network, check out dicetowernetwork.com. Back to Alex and Sean for this week's Dukes Double-Take.
All right, this week's Dukes Double-Take, we're looking back at episode 57, Game Boy Viceroy.
Yeah.
Which is when we had our good buddy Dan King, the Game Boy geek, on, and we were reviewing Viceroy. This one was an interesting one. So
yeah.
Dan King gave this one a 4.
Yes.
You gave this one a 3. I gave this one a 2.
You sure did.
At the time, tied for the lowest rating.
Yeah, I was surprised you gave it a 2.
Why?
Because it felt similar to Seven Wonders in my mind, and I figured that you would like it, given that at that point Seven Wonders was it still wasn't your number 1 game at that point, but it had been, and you enjoyed Seven Wonders, and I thought it had a similar feel to it, some scoring. Yeah, no, I know, and I prefer Seven Wonders drastically compared to this game. Yeah, I'm not crazy about it either.
So the drafting is completely different in this than Seven Wonders.
Right. When they call it an auction, but really it's you pay for a draft.
Kind of.
A Rochester-style draft.
And unlike, say, Elysium, which has a Rochester-style draft that I love,
yeah,
it was not fun.
Okay.
And I don't remember totally why it was fun, but I do remember at the time describing it as a Machi Koro kind of game. Which is never a good thing if you know the show, because neither of us like Machi Koro.
Nope.
So, yeah, I was not a fan of this one. I didn't have fun with it. It had some interesting things. I liked the idea of the painting, the gems to get points that way. But just overall, to me, It didn't work thematically. It didn't work in general. And I don't know about you, Sean. I haven't played this one since.
No, I haven't played it. I have no desire to play it. And in fact, I don't think I ever want to play it again. So that being the case, I'm going to revise my 3. It is going to fall down to a 2. Game has some merit, but has significant problems.
And I'm not going to go to a 1 with this one. I don't think poorly designed but playable fits it as much as game has some merit but has significant detractors. I think it's doing some interesting things. They're just not things I want to play.
Yeah.
So it stays at a 2. I hadn't thought about this one. I went back and listened to the episode and I remembered why I hadn't thought about this one. Yeah, I'm not surprised.
Yeah, and I was surprised because there are so many things about this game that I feel like I should have enjoyed. I should have enjoyed that drafting, the different combos. There's a little bit of engine building. It seemed like something I would like a lot, and it just fell really short. And I have no desire to play it again. The scoring was kind of difficult at the end of the game. But we had some thoughts on the guild too, right, Alex?
Yeah, some different opinions for sure. And so Scott Sexton says, I think I have an unpopular opinion about Viceroy. I don't think I hate the game as much as the Dukes do, but I don't love it either. It's a squarely in the middle game for me, 3 or 4. Nothing particularly sexy here, nothing particularly offensive. Once you get rid of the wonky, imbalanced cards and stupid Kickstarter gems. Yeah, you have to, I remember some of those law cards especially that just seemed broken. For my kids, Sea of Clouds fires Viceroy as their Rochester draft game of choice. I'm still undecided as I don't think any game has really nailed it. Yeah, that includes Elysium, which I'm also pretty mad about.
Boo, Scott.
You take that
Boo.
back, Scott Sexton. Honestly, I think I'd never play this 2-player as I get a better game out of Seven Wonders Duel.
Yay, Scott Sexton.
Ooh,
Yay.
Scott Sexton. 3 or 4 gets tricky too because it becomes such a table hog.
But by the way, you should play games of Seven Wonders Duel and log them for Alex's
Absolutely.
board game.
Just don't do it in a way that gets them thrown out. If you log like 5,000 plays, they'll throw it out of the formula.
Oh, yeah.
Sylvain Lacroix says, in regards to Viceroy, I actually enjoyed the game. I played over 20 times with different player counts, and we always had fun. Not a top 30 game for sure, but it might hold a place in my top 50 or so. Sure, it's not getting to the table as often lately, but my wife actually likes it, so it will stay in the collection. Well, I'm glad someone else there enjoys it, because we don't.
Yeah, hey, if you like it, more power to you. I could see why people would enjoy this. Like I said, there are elements to it that you would think I would like, but it just, I don't know. But yeah, just no desire to play it ever again, Alex. So that's going to be our Dukes Double-Take on Viceroy. For Alex, it stays at a 2. For me, Sean Ramirez, goes from a 3 to a 2.
This week's discussion topic was brought to our attention by our good buddy Matthew. Living in a board game world, which I think he grabbed off of a Facebook group somewhere.
Yeah, the board game group. Someone had brought it up at some point. And
cool topic. And this one got a good amount of response in the guild for sure. Basically, the idea is if you could live in a board game world, which board game world would you live in?
Yeah. And I think we kind of took out IPs, like obviously Star Trek, Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, things like that. I mean, yeah, those are easy. Would I want to live? Would you want to live
Star
in
Wars?
Star
I would. Yeah, I think so.
What
depending
period?
on the right time, right?
The height of the Old Republic?
Yes.
That'd be cool.
Yeah, that would be cool.
That'd be super cool. Star Wars, I'd want to live through. Yeah, that'd be cool. Because Utopia, future, except for the Dominion Wars. I don't want to be involved in the Dominion Wars. I just want to be on a science vessel, and I just want to play...
Back on track, Sean. Get back on track.
3-dimensional chess with Spock. R.I.P. Leonard Nimoy. Anyway, now I'm depressed.
So what board game world would you want to live in, Sean?
Okay, so first off, here are 2 that come to mind because they involve playing games.
You went a little meta with this from looking at your list.
Yeah. So I'd like to live in the world of Essen the board game, where you would just get to play a bunch of board games come out at Essen. That sounds totally awesome to me.
Okay.
The other one would be Millennium Blades. I would like to live in this world where there's been this 1,000-year history of the CCG, and where, the rock stars of this world are the Millennium Blades players. That sounds super cool, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So you figure like instead of sports stars and rock stars being the big stars, it would be board gamers and card game players and things like that. That sounds pretty cool. And then I'm just playing Millennium Blades all the time. The actual CCG, not the meta version of the CCG. Of the CCG. Yeah.
Good clarification.
If it's been around for 1,000 years, it's gotta be good, right? Because that's how time works. I don't know. So yeah, Millennium Blades. So those are 2. I've got some others, but what were you thinking?
So the one that comes to mind, and it came to mind first, and I haven't thought of one that overrides it, is Baseball Highlights 2045.
Sure, I figured.
Not first mention.
Nope.
At this point. Just because I think being in that world where you're seeing all of these games and the combination and interplay of having robots in a sport and having cyborgs in a sport and having naturals in a sport, the kind of guys trying to struggle to make it against these augmented things, really cool. Just a really cool concept.
Yeah.
And so that would be one for sure. In terms of other worlds to live in, so this got brought up a ton, and we're about to read at least one of them. I agree with Tokaido. I think that would be super cool, just kind of being on this awesome path along, vacationing as you would. I think being in that world is a lot of fun, kind of trying to have the best vacation.
Okay.
But without being too big of a jerk about it.
So as I was kind of looking over my collection at some of the games, I'm like, well, that one I would probably die in. I'd probably die in that one. I'd be beheaded there. So there's a lot of conflict in these games, and you got to be a little careful with that. So one I would think of would be Arcadia Quest, which again has conflict, but your heroes don't die. When they die, they just come back to life and they get a little niggling injury, and you go on. So would it be cool to have like this, fantasy theme with cool weapons and magical powers and things like that? Yeah, but with most games...
But you don't want to die.
You don't want to die. And in most games, that's going to be, part of the equation. So I figure Arcadia Quest, you just come back to life. So that's cool. I do Arcadia Quest. And then the other one is a little bit trickier, Lords of Vegas.
Interesting.
So you're kind of a real estate casino developer. There's a little bit of a mob element here, so you got to be a little careful. You go in and you kind of muscle people out of casinos. So as long as you're not, you just got to be careful. And apparently I've learned nothing from the movie Casino, but no, never mind. That would be a spoiler alert.
Well, I mean, so what I would imagine is in that world, someone's in there like putting $10,000 on the roulette wheel against the house.
Yeah.
And if they win, they take over the entire casino somehow.
Okay.
Because they've made enough money and they've bankrupted you.
Right.
Is sort of the version of rolling dice in that.
Okay.
I guess. Yeah, I don't know. It seems a little swingy.
I would like to
live in.
I would like to be this big real estate tycoon, real estate developer. That sounds fun. They would be the best casinos, the best.
Oh boy, that wasn't a great impersonation. Your Arnold was better, and even your Arnold was.
Get down.
No, that's iffy. Come on.
Get down.
Get down.
Get to the chopper.
Get to the chopper.
All right. Anyway.
Vote. Seriously, we need to have something on the guild where people vote on who has a better Arnold impression.
Okay.
We'll find out.
What about Christopher Walken?
Yours is...
I used to be able to do a good one, and then for some reason...
You can't.
I can't anymore.
All right, here's some of what the guild had to say about this topic. And as I mentioned, Tokaido was the most popular answer far and away. This is just one of them. Jimmy, the world of Tokaido sounds pretty good. Very leisurely, gorgeous views, and the only thing you have to worry about is having the best time.
A nice bath in a hot spring sounds really good right now.
Oh, yeah.
That sounds good.
But there were so many people picking that Jesse Metcalf chimed in with the opposition view of Tokaido. For everyone who picks Tokaido, while it sounds peaceful, Edo period Japan would be quite the culture shock to most Westerners, especially females and non-nobility, not to mention actual Westerners. Now, if the game is strictly fictional and does not incorporate actual history, or I could choose to be a samurai or a priest, yeah, Tokaido would be great.
That pesky actual history.
Little reality check from Jesse there. Awesome. E. Tally says, Imhotep. My number one bucket list is to visit Egypt someday. To be a builder and construct one of the monuments would be cool. I don't know if I'd want to do that. That's a lot of hard work.
Yeah, but they had like technology. Like I think I was reading somewhere where it wasn't really slave labor. It was like anyway.
Okay.
I don't know. That's cool. Ancient times are cool.
Matt Bain had a good one. But
no toilet paper. That always worries me about going back in time.
I guess there's sand.
I like toilet paper.
Try sand and see how that goes.
No, thanks.
Matt Bain says, viticulture for me. I'd love to live in old world Italy and be a winemaker enjoying the beauty of the land.
Yeah, like Captain Picard.
Solid choice.
After he retired from Starfleet, he was had a little vineyard. Vineyard. Vineyard.
Okay. Wow. Though that would be a kind of a cool place. You're growing wins. You're growing victory.
Yeah, exactly. He is Captain Picard. That's what he does.
Oh, man.
He grows wins.
Christopher John said, suburbia, where every city could have potentially up to 3 airports, a bunch of schools, and a bunch of inexplicable bodies of water scattered throughout.
Okay.
Josh Niekirk had a very elaborate one for Scoville. Imagine going to Scoville High, cheering on your football team, the Flames, who are on such a hot streak, and looking forward to the annual Scoville Chili Pepper Festival. You've been trying out a new recipe for the chili cook-off, but still feel that it's just lukewarm. What you need is a new type of pepper for a new generation, and you've just put in a bid for some grant money to create your own Scoville Labs. Will you find the elusive perfect pepper, or will it remain like a ghost, forever just an apparition of your imagination? Go Flames!
Go Flames!
By the way, the Red Hot Chili Peppers play quite frequently in the land of Scoville.
Oh,
Aha.
that sounds pretty cool.
I think so. I like them. Actually, do like them.
Well, Under the Bridge? Yeah, let's do that.
BJ from Board Game Gumbo, hands down above and below. Hey, we're talking about Ryan Lockett games this week. All right. One word, cider. Plus, I could be friends with talking frogs. I could build a cool little village. I could explore the dark underground, apparently without dying. Did I mention cider? Though I will say with this, yeah, you wouldn't die, but your legs would get broken all the time. Even exerting yourself just to help an old lady find her goat, you'd break your legs. So,
by the way, he and I are playing in week 5 of our actual fantasy football league.
Oh, all right.
Yeah,
fair enough.
Week 5 is a week for me. I have a bunch of people on
bye weeks.
Yeah.
Hey, you know what that is now?
I do know what that is.
Hooray, Sean! And he says his close second, though, is Baseball Highlights 2045. First mention. No, it's not, BJ. It's not the first mention.
Come
we already
on.
mentioned it. Come on. No one we're going to talk about this during the episode. God. I love baseball, and this game sounds even better than what we have now. I would agree with that.
Yeah, robots are cool.
Kevin Har says, definitely City of Iron. Hey, look at that. It's another Ryan Lockett game. I love the Toadmen of Om. The steampunk watercolor style of the game is so engrossing. There's such a variety of landscapes, from the simple turnip fields full of yak creatures to the flying islands run on bottled demons. All of Lockett's games are thrilling, but no world is as spectacular as City of Iron. And I would agree, by the way. I think that's his most beautiful game, art-wise.
Maybe.
Okay.
I'll have to think about it some more.
Fair enough. Dan Stanley comes with not Tokaido, but Takanoko.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
Bamboo gardens are awesome, and it would be super entertaining as the Emperor to watch the gardener and Panda battling it out for garden supremacy, all the while sipping on my green tea.
Because I've always imagined, and maybe we've talked about this before, but I always see the Panda and the gardener as Bill Murray and the Gopher. From
I can see
Caddyshack.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's too fun. It is funny when you play. That game has such a theme that kind of isn't really spelled out, but you feel as you play.
Oh, yeah. It's such a great
sure.
game. Takanoko's fantastic.
Medieval Academy, how great would it be to declare your major as knight? It sure beats being a lawyer and a reporter. Oh, hey, back off, Dan.
That's probably true.
Back off, Dan.
That's probably true.
Okay.
That's probably true.
So yeah, this was a cool one, and it certainly seemed to inspire a lot of folks to think about living in a board game world. Thanks to whoever posted that on the Facebook group, and thanks to Matthew for suggesting it. So yeah, that'll just about do it. But before we go, our naming runner-ups. All right, this one had the most thumbs on the thread, Sean, but there's a reason we didn't pick it.
Yeah.
So this one came from the name father, Steve O'Rourke. Mm-hmm. Bit of a cold streak for Steve. Not gonna lie, it's been a few weeks since we've chosen an episode. He still far and away has the most.
I don't think that's a cold streak necessarily.
He's come close.
Okay.
Recently, it's been more of a bridesmaid streak for him.
All right.
Not cold in that he hasn't had names that have been in the top 6, because this one's in the top 6. His name was Seafail. Here was the problem with that one. So it's clever. He's referring to Islebound and Viceroy. He's incorporating both of those.
Yeah.
The problem is the implication of that is that Islebound is a Seafail.
Right. And it's not.
It's not. And additionally, it could potentially imply that we think Seafall, which neither of us have played to this point, is a Seafail.
Which I probably won't be playing anytime soon.
Yes.
Because I've heard mixed reviews.
You've heard it's a Seafail, but we don't actually know if it's a Seafail.
Don't know.
So maybe we'll save that in case we ever review Seafall, but that's seeming less likely for some reason.
By the way, I'm playing Steve in week 2 of the Fantasy Football League. Week 2 is a good week. It's a good week.
Man. We were supposed to play in week 1, but we didn't draft in time to score in week 1.
No, I think we're still scoring in week 1.
Are we actually?
I think so.
Okay, well, I'm doing pretty well then.
Yeah.
Okay.
You and I are week 1 matchups.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I think.
Well, just because you have a Thursday game already.
But are we scoring?
I think, well, we'll find out.
I'm so confused.
Somehow I'm the commissioner.
Yes, you are the commissioner.
Jeez.
Knowing nothing about football or fantasy football.
Except having watched all the episodes of the league.
Right.
By the way, you're Taco.
No. No, because I'm not going to forget to set my lineup.
Okay.
I've seen that show.
Yeah.
Get off my back, Sean.
No.
I'm definitely not, what's his face? Who's the doctor?
Andre?
Yeah,
you're Andre.
I'm not Andre. I'm absolutely not Andre. All right. So, other top 6 names. The Bruce Mac came with In a World, referring to the in a board game worlds and the worlds that Ryan Lockett creates.
Yep.
Like that one, thought that one was clever. 3 different people suggested, and by the way, this was a good week for stealing on the guild for names, because I think it was Ziggy came up later with the one we ended up choosing.
Not for stealing, but for piracy.
Piracy. John Giblin, Scott Sexton, and Todd Coke all suggested some version or something close to Islebound and Gagged.
Yeah. Which
Family-friendly show, guys.
Yeah.
Family-friendly. Come on. Get your head out of the gutter. And Ryan Post came with Homeward Bound. Rob Rouse with Treasure Island. So Islebound and then the gold and gems you collect in Viceroy. So
yeah, makes sense.
good combo there. And then this one's not part of the top 6, but Chris wanted me to read it. And Chris is awesome, so I'm going to. Lar, thar be sea monsters.
Because Lar is the name of the world and the fictional world in Viceroy.
Sure.
Sure.
Because it's such a thematic game that you want to... Anyway. All right. That'll just about do it for this week, Sean.
Sure will, Alex. So let's go ahead and wrap up episode 109. I'll be back. Or Isla will be.
I'll be back.
So good job, Chris. Thanks for naming that. Next week, we're probably going to be reviewing Potion Explosion.
Potion Explosion.
So until next time, this is Sean.
And Alex.
And Hail Hydra.
Thank you so much for listening to the Dukes of Dice. Today's episode was recorded in the Duchy on September 10th, 2016. Our theme music is provided by Carbo Hydro M from his Prime Legacy album. The Dukes of Dice are a proud member of the Dice Tower Network. For other great board gaming podcasts, check out dicetowernetwork.com, and for all the latest in the Duchy, go to dukesofdice.com. Find us on Twitter at Dukes of Dice. Join in conversations on our Board Game Geek Guild. Find us on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Please also consider supporting us on Patreon. Thanks to Meeple Realty, who's provided promotional support. For high-quality board game inserts, check out meeplerealty.com. Meeple Realty, think inside the box. We'll see you back here next week. Until then, game on! Speaking of draft mechanic.
Uh-huh.
No, I didn't have anything there.
Oh.
I'm just making fun of you.
Why would you make fun of me?
Because that's what we do, apparently.
Isn't that
Yes.
kind of cruel and just unnecessarily harmful?
We brawl on this show, Sean.
Oh.
All right, everyone. Chill.
Allow me to break the ice.
I need your clothes, your boots, and your motorcycle.
Okay, do that one. I need your clothes, your boots, and your motorcycle.
I need your clothes, your boots, and your motorcycle. Give them to me. Give them to me now.
What the hell did you do to him, man?
I did nothing. The pavement was his enemy.
I did nothing. The pavement was his enemy. That was from Twins.
Okay.